Well, hi there, everyone. Or should I say hi there to you if you're the person watching this video? Um, I just thought I'd give sort of longer format podcasting a bit of a go. And the podcast is called Being Extraordinary because that's kind of my obsession with life is how does we as human beings live more of our life in the being extraordinary space? And these are probably going to be 30-minute episodes, roughly, just expanding on some topics that I've talked about in the past. Some of you may have followed some of my 1 minute wins, where I talk about subjects in ideally under a minute. That's kind of the whole point of them. Whereas this format gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit longer about certain topics. So this topic is really looking at high achievers who generally are my clients, my coaching clients, and why do sometimes do they get stuck? And I think, in essence, one of the biggest challenges with people that are high achievers is normally it's their thinking, it's their ego, it's their smartness that's kind of got them where they've got to. And I think there's a problem with that because it can also be limiting as well. So if we have a tendency to use our brains a lot, our thinking a lot, that's our superpower, that's our go-to, then we have to also accept that while creating the success that you've currently got can also be a limiting factor as well. So sometimes overthinking can be a massive, massive problem, right? If you combine overthinking or smart people with, say, an ADHD brain, which my brain definitely has those qualities, then what we will do is create a massive menu of choice, so big actually it's not functional in terms of being able to choose from it. But regardless, smart people generally can come up with really lots of possibilities, and often that's one of the bigger problems is we come up with too many possibilities. So we kind of know what to do, but then we go, "Oh, yeah, but is that the best way?" So overthinking can be a massive challenge. I think people that I've seen who are super successful in life and are doing really well and are not stuck are generally ones that come up with a concept that seems workable and they go, "Yeah, okay, it's not perfect, but I'll give it a go. I'll run it." So they are taking action first, then looking for feedback on that action, um, and then evolving what their actions are going forward. I think smart people can have a tendency to look for kind of the perfect solution up front because, quite frankly, often at school and academia, you were kind of rewarded for doing that, kind of coming up with, the best answer. And it wasn't necessarily time constrained, unless you're, of course, in an exam or something like that. And the problem I find with people that think about things a lot is usually the more we think about something, actually our brain is kind of will look for more problems. Oh, you haven't considered this, or you haven't considered that. And that can then cause what I call paralysis by analysis, which is you've got just too much going on in the brain and you just feel incapable of making a choice because you're in overwhelm. So a big, big part of getting unstuck is just to take any action. Because if you take any action, it'll move you forward. And then you've actually got practical input and feedback in terms of what works and what doesn't work. And undoubtedly, successful people that I see in life that are just doing well in business are those that are consistently looking to take action. I'm not saying you need to be kind of reckless with it or charge forward without thought, but we should be action biased. Another thing that smart people do is we constantly referencing things all the time. And that actually can be a really useful skill if we are referencing past achievements, past skills that we built, past experience, past wisdom. So it's part of my past, present, future model, which I'll be explaining over the next few episodes a bit more. That's great because what you're then doing is you're accessing resources. But if we look backwards and look at the things that we have guilt, regret, shame about, then the challenge with that is then we will naturally stop ourselves from moving forward because we don't want more of that. Our limbic system, our survival system, will tell us to be careful because we don't want more of the stuff that we've been focusing on in the past. As a smart person, we have to very deliberately use the past. And the reason that we look backwards as human beings is to interpret events, to learn from experience, to ideally not repeat critical mistakes. But the key is that transition from what am I going to learn from this event or series of events? And then what does that mean positively that I want to do going forward? Not what do I want to avoid going forward? What do I actually want to do going forward? Having referenced these, very deliberately having referenced these past events. Another thing that smart people do is they are really good at looking forward, preparing for the future, um, what might happen. And that used in a specific way is very useful because you can start to make risk assessments for your life and your business and to ideally mitigate those risks. That is actually a useful skill to have. What's not a useful skill to have is to get stuck on those and to get obsessed with what could happen that could go wrong, because then generally what your brain does, unfortunately, is it looks at, oh, here's some stuff you're focusing on. Let me try and deliver it for you. There are a number of examples of when people focus on danger or threat, we tend to almost get drawn towards it in a magnetic way. So one of the things that I've got, let me get this right. By the way, oh my God, I can't do this. It says here, full color future. So that is a smart use of the future. What do I want? It's my favorite questions that I use for myself and for my coaching clients. What do you want? Now, what's great about being a smart person is that you can then start to create very vividly outcomes that you want. And again, magnetically, your brain will be drawn towards it. So now you can see how we're kind of using two ways to potentially get unstuck. One of which is to actually remember quite how brilliant you are and all the amazing things you've achieved, and to, well, you know what, I'm pretty much capable of anything. Let me build on that. And then also, what do I want? Let me vividly imagine that, vividly create that, connect that vision to my past resources, wisdoms, and brilliance, and then go, oh, yeah, okay, that's totally doable, because that realistically, pretty much everything you think of in terms of what you actually really do want, there's probably been a human being before that's created that already. So there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't too, right? I think another way for smart people to become unstuck is to use a tool that I call identity quadrant. It's something that I created actually, like a lot of the tools that I built up over the years of being in personal development. It's a tool I created for myself originally, and it was very much crystallizing my past wisdom, experience, knowledge, etc., etc. An identity quadrant is dead simple. So imagine, in fact, you can grab a piece of paper now if you want to pause this video, unless you're watching it live, can make it a bit more tricky. You take a sheet of A4 and you split it into 4 quadrants. So line down the middle, line across the middle. And top left, you put in, what do I love? And that's a very, very deliberate word, and one that we don't use very much in business, but I think it's really important. Or you can write down, what am I passionate about? Whatever word resonates with you, but it's got to be a strong, powerful word. It's like, what do I love? Now, I don't think it's going to massively surprise you if I tell you your life and your business should be strongly aligned with what you love. But it's also amazing how many people that I come across, and particularly clients early on in their coaching journey with me, where they are not doing that. They are not very deliberately organizing their time and their focus around doing things they love. And business, it's really important because obviously when we're starting out with a business as a founder, we are doing a lot of the things ourselves. It's just necessity, right? You don't have the cash flow yet. You're having to usually kind of bootstrap the business. But as soon as you start earning some money, you really should be looking to farm out stuff that is not very high on your list, that are things you don't like doing, and focusing more on stuff that you're passionate and you like, love and you like. Because do you know what? Running your own business, as you know, is not an easy thing to do. So you might as well enjoy it. That leads me to my second box, which is top right, which is, what do you dislike, or actually really what do you hate? Now, This is really important box, and this box was invented for me working with teenagers. You ask them, "What do you love? What you're passionate about?" You get a few grunts back and not a lot much else. You ask a teenager what they dislike, they'll give you a long list. So 2 things with dislike box. So first one is you really should be avoiding doing consistent activities from that box. You should absolutely be communicating with your ideal client base around things that you dislike, things that you won't tolerate, because actually that helps differentiate you from everyone else in the market. Absolutely, you should be talking about your passions and what you love, but equally, you should be telling things you really dislike. So one of the examples I picked for myself is, you know what, I dislike a lot of commonly used personal development tools because, quite frankly, I don't think they work very well. And I will probably going through those over future episodes. Is there are a number of tools that speakers, coaches talk about a lot. And I'm thinking, have you actually used these yourselves or have you used them with your clients? And actually, is it as effective as you're making it out to be? Because actually, I think some of them are quite frankly garbage. So, me talking about stuff like a dislike, you have now formed an opinion about me. And it might be you just about to switch off the video because you don't agree with me. But that's cool because you're not my ideal client. And yet you might be sitting there going, "Do you know what? He's got a point there. It's like there's some stuff that I've been told I should do, and it just doesn't really work very well." Well, I'm here to tell you, I'm not surprised. The real power about the dislike box of the identity quadrant is to go, what might be the opposite of that? And that can then go in your love or passionate about box. And this is where it originates with teenagers is I'd go, for example, I and a lot of teenagers I talked to in the past have gone, I hate being bored. Okay, so what's the opposite of that? Well, it's kind of variety. It's having things that you can get excited about. And one of the ways that I run my business is very much on a kind of like a buffet menu based thing. Is like I'm not necessarily tying my down to very strict, monotonous routines. I'm just going, there are certain elements that I need to do for my business, but I'm going to be somewhat flexible about how I go about doing that. So that I hate boredom bit has now been translated across into make sure I have lots of variety and excitement in my business. And like, so I'm basically stacking that passionate love box. And be careful what I say there, right. So the next box down, and this relates to some stuff I've already talked about the past is bottom left is achievement box or things you're proud of box. Because I haven't come across anyone that spends enough time in thinking about these things. Like, what's your major achievements? Was it for me getting all A's for O level, or going to Oxford University, or becoming a vice president at JP Morgan Chase, or was it becoming an international croquet player? All these things. I talk about these things, and it's not bragging, it's not being kind of arrogant because they're true. It's things that you have done, and you don't spend enough time thinking about them. And I've yet to come across someone that does. And it's a really, really important box. For when my American clients, I call it the awesome box, right? British clients, maybe not so much. We call it the achievements box, right? But it's a great reminder of things that you have done that were extraordinary and really massively increases the probability of being able to achieve things that you now want to achieve because you are connecting yourself to the best version of you and you are stacking on top of that, right? So that box is really important. You should look at that box a lot. And I'm pretty much guarantee that there's a lot of stuff in that achievements box that relates to the love and passionate about box as well. And I would actually absolutely guarantee there's probably very little in that achievements box that relate to your dislike box. Interesting, right? It's not rocket science stuff, this, but it works. The final box, bottom right, is zone of genius box. And I use those words very, very carefully because you are a genius at certain things, and the things that you are genius at, you are probably take for granted because you find them so easy to do. Like, I can sit here and I can yabber along for 30 minutes just checking the time because it's the first time I've done this. So, like, I'm very aware that I can go on and on, but I can just create content at will. It's a zone of genius for me. I can sort of aggregate different ideas and concepts and just keep talking. In fact, bar needing sleep and food and drink and stuff, I could literally just keep going with this stuff. Zone of genius for me. Speaking a zone of genius for me. Coming up with new coaching tools, zone of genius. Being able to analyze trends and data in human beings and being able to understand patterns, so then being able to help them to find great solutions for things. That's a zone of genius for me. So it makes a lot of sense for you to play in your zone of genius because very few people can compete with you when you're in that area. And actually, I find when you're in zone of genius, there actually isn't any competition because there might be other people out there that are similar in terms of their genius, but they're all different flavors, right? So the more you can embrace your flavor, which is very much what the identity quadrant is about, embracing your flavor, running your life and business from that place, then you can create extraordinary things just by tapping into fundamentally who you are. And then as you start to grow your business and you start to create teams, if you can take your team members through this, through their identity quadrants, what do you love? What are you passionate about? Okay, let's make sure that the way that you do your job function within our business aligns with that. What do you hate? What do you really strongly dislike? Okay, let's do our best to avoid that. Sometimes we have to do things that are not play with the month. Like for me, accounting and year-end sort of paperwork and stuff like that. It's not very high on my list, but I do get some satisfaction from completing it. I realised I put my camera on tracking mode, so let me just do this, and it should be smart and pick up on that. The joys of tech. Yeah, get an automatic tracking video camera when when you naturally jig around a lot and move your hands. Really smart move. And then, yeah, okay, what your team members, what are their achievements? Do they talk about them? Do every week? Do you have a meeting where you talk about your achievements last week? Do you have a wider opportunity to get together? Maybe it's for an offsite or some sort of workshop together where your team members talk about their achievements, like life achievements. What is their zone of genius? What are they brilliant at? Encourage them to talk about it without any level of modesty because it's the truth. And watch how your business grows and expand when you give people the opportunity to play games where they can build their achievements, where they can operate in their zone of genius, and they can do things they love and passionate about. And at this point, I'll unashamedly promote the work that I do. Is if you want me to come in and talk to you and your team about identity quadrants and about the past, present, future model, because playing in your zone of genius, doing stuff that you're passionate, you love about, that is about being present, really, being in the moment. And you proper utilizing your past and present. So they just past and future, sorry, so they automatically feed into the present. If you can do that as a business, you'll have an extraordinary business and you'll have extraordinary employees who are having an extraordinary quality of life. Now that is exciting for me, as opposed to stifling business cultures where you're trying to ram people into boxes and where there's excessive control because fundamentally you don't trust people to do the job you ask them to do. It's just, I've seen it so many times and it doesn't work. It doesn't work because eventually control breaks down. I think the other formula that I'd want to talk about on this particular podcast is it's a Tim Gallwey equation. And Tim Gallwey wrote a number of books. One of my favorite ones is The Inner Game of Tennis from the early 1970s. And Tim Gallwey talks about that performance is potential minus interference. Performance is potential minus interference. Now, what's interesting about this is I would say a lot of personal development focuses on the interference. So, like, what's wrong? Where's the friction? Where's the debris? Now, don't get me wrong. That is a smart game to play. That is a smart game to play because if there is something going wrong, if there is some friction going wrong, if you can clean it up very quickly, and that is something that I learned to do really quickly when I was a Tony Robbins senior trainer, where we would, if someone was struggling in your team, 70 or 80 people in an event in the room, the ability to get them out of that room, do a few minutes intervention with them, get them back in the room, could completely transform the way they're interacting with that particular event. The problem is, while it's important to clear up obvious friction and debris, be super careful about overdoing that. Because what you become is a serial problem solver. And you start looking to fix things before you can move forward. You start always getting a habit of always looking for what's wrong. and that can be very, very detrimental to your well-being and the well-being of your business. And I know because I've done it, quite frankly. So Tim always talks about potential minus interference. So interference is important to clear up the obvious and the easy, but I really want to focus on the potential bit. And it's often under examined. It doesn't get enough focus or attention, the potential bit. And the potential bit fundamentally is, again, going back to play life in your zone of genius, building your achievements, do stuff that you love and you're passionate about, be present, be in the moment, trust, wisdom, and then from that place, your potential has the opportunity to explode. Because fundamentally, you want to start to get a little bit woo-woo and floaty, given that my background was pure and applied biologist at university, so very scientific background, and then also an investment banker for about a decade. Woo and floaty for me would have been, oh, a bit of a what's all that nonsense. But I've looked at this a lot, and if I look at my own performance, and I look at the performance of my best clients and their teams, if we can unlock potential, that is a limitless game. So the past, present, future model, the identity quadrant model that I've talked about in this episode, that is really all about unlocking potential. And notice I'm not talking about raising potential or leveling up. It's actually effectively returning you to your limitless state, which is the potential bit. And then, so if you can unlock more potential and you can lower obvious interference, then your performance go through the roof. And that's really what my work is I see a lot of businesses and I see a lot of individuals, solopreneurs trying to create the business that they want, and they get absolutely obsessed with strategy. And don't get me wrong, like having a good quality strategy is really, really important, because if you're really super busy doing the wrong things, you're never really going to get anywhere. But I think there's enough information out there, and there are some absolutely quality people that I've worked with and currently work with who are amazing at business strategy and really are very current on business strategy. But what I became obsessed with was, it's not necessarily what you do, it's who you are when executing that strategy. And that's where the human performance bit comes in. And this is why I invented things like the past, present, future model, identity quadrant module, because I think the bigger game to play is, how are you showing up in your life and business, and how is your team doing that? And let's unlock higher levels of potential through that. Because if you've got people that are fundamentally operating from a being space, from being present space, from their zone of genius space, they will make a half decent strategy work very, very well. And then if you've got an excellent or an extraordinary strategy, honestly, you're going to take on the world, because there are very, very few companies out there that I see that have an extraordinary strategy and also have extraordinary human performance within it. And if I had to choose one, I'd take the extraordinary human performance bit, because if your humans in your business and life are showing up in that way, you're actually going to find the strategies that you need to operate from that. And if you think about the differentiator between you and another business, it's usually going to be how the humans are showing up. Because you learn, right? If you're smart and you're that action focused individual and team that I've been talking about earlier on, you're going to get a lot of feedback. And then if you are if all of you and your team are operating from an extraordinary human being perspective, you will take on board that feedback and you will adapt very, very quickly. So again, it's coming back to some of my biology stuff, is like, you will actually enable yourself to evolve rapidly into a business that is highly effective and highly efficient and very impactful, quite frankly. Because I see at the moment, I see quite a separation between businesses that still do things the old school way, the hierarchical way, we are focused primarily first on business profits and maybe less so on employee well-being and customer interaction. And you contrast that to probably a slightly newer wave of businesses that can be highly effective and highly profitable, but they don't see well-being as a tick box exercise. They see it as a very smart human performance play, because if you have humans that are in a good place, they're going to be more productive. They're going to have better customer relations, both internally within the business and externally to your actual external customers. They're going to be off sick less because they're happier people. You're going to retain your best employees because they love working within your team and actually probably help to grow your business, and hopefully will then become stakeholders in your business, the best ones. And you're going to find it dead easy to hire because your culture becomes magnetic. So it's actually a really smart thing to do to play this human performance game well. And I said earlier on, if you would like to have a conversation about this for you, and it might be you're a founder or a solopreneur, or it might be that you've got a team in place, I'd love to have a conversation about you with some of the topics I've talked about today. And in the absence of knowing I can witter on forever, I'm going to make sure I keep this episode under 30 minutes, and I'll see you on the next one. If you want to find out more about me and my business, it's on www.richwaterman.com. Keep it simple. Bye for now.